Morning, dear participants. I warmly welcome all of you to day 8 of iTech program on the theme of energy systems and carbon neutral economy. We will be starting the first session of the day, which will be on the topic of electric vehicle and its environmental benefits. The talk will be delivered to us by Professor B.K. Panigrahi. Professor Panigrahi is a faculty in Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Delhi. He is also currently head of Center for Automotive Research and Tribology at IIT Delhi. He has more than 30 years of experience in research areas including power system planning, operation and control, machine intelligence, and evolutionary computing. So with this short introduction, sir, I hand over the rest of the time to you, sir.
Thank you for the nice introduction and giving me the opportunity to present on this particular topic before all the audiences. So let me share my slide. I hope the slides are visible to all of you.
Yes, sir, we can see the slides.
And just let me change, whether it is changing or not, please confirm. Is it going to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let me start. Very good morning to all of you. So this particular theme, I'll make it as simple as possible. And maybe sometimes I will put up what are the research thrust and research domain in this particular area. So the topic which is given to me is the electric vehicle and its environmental benefits. And everybody, this is a very common scenario. Everybody knows it. Once you will adopt the electric vehicle, then definitely it has a tremendous effect on the environment, particularly to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. But this is not true, because I'll tell you, there are so many things involved. Not only we are just the picture, which two pictures you are showing on the left hand side and the right hand side. If I'm looking into the vehicle, ordinary, the gasoline based vehicle or petrol engine or diesel engine, you know, a lot of pollutants are emitted. So this is one of the reason you are telling these vehicles are polluting the environment. But when I'm driving an electric vehicle, and so we are telling that it is not emitting any pollutant, so this is a safer. And clearly we are giving 100 marks to this electric vehicle, and maybe very less mark, 5-10 marks to this IC engine vehicle, all gasoline based vehicle. And this is not true. That I have to just tell you in some concepts and some literature, some reference which I have collected throughout. Okay, coming to the classification of the electric vehicle, because when we are talking of the electric vehicle, the basic idea is in an IC engine, we have the IC engine vehicle. So in this IC engine, you have a fuel tank, that is your petrol or diesel or gasoline. Then the fuel, this drives the IC engine. Then this engine delivers the power to the fuel. But when I'm talking of an electric vehicle, then this IC engine and fuel tank are replaced. So basically your fuel tank is replaced by the battery. So I must have a battery in my vehicle. And once I'm talking of a battery, this is a DC source. Then the IC engine is replaced by an electric motor. So when the IC engine is replaced by electric motor, then different vehicles which we are looking into across India or across globe are having two type of motor. Either it is a DC motor, which is permanent magnet synchronous motor, or IPMSM machine, or many variants of this motor, or it has an induction motor. You know that induction motor is just for understanding. This is the versatile motor which is used for a lot of times. Okay, any motor we will find in the industry is a 3-phase induction motor. So now what is the difference between these two motors, which I am using in my electric vehicle in place of the IC engine? If it is a DC, PMSM motor, then we are supplying it to the DC. But if it is an induction motor, then we have to supply the AC power. I will come into that particular slide. So the basic classification of the electric vehicle which we are thinking of, one is the battery electric vehicle. We call it BEV. So when it is a battery electric vehicle, I can tell this particular vehicle is fully electric. Okay. So as this vehicle is completely electric, so it must have a rechargeable battery. So battery is one of the most important part of this electric vehicle. And mostly we are using the lithium ion battery. What is its advantage? What is its disadvantage? Whether this is not polluting the environment, that I will come later. Okay. But in an electric vehicle, the complete, the main part of this electric vehicle is a rechargeable lithium ion battery having different chemistry, though that chemistry I will come in also later on. So this vehicle is also known as plug-in electric vehicle. You can plug it to your electric supply and it will charge, the battery will be charged. So for the charging, you need an external outlet. So where I need an external outlet, I can charge it in my home, which is AC, alternating current supply. Then there is an onboard charger, which is on the vehicle itself. So that's why I call it onboard charger, which converts this AC to DC, and the DC is used to charge the battery. So that is the main idea. I am using, remember, here I am giving this emphasis, this particular point. I am using electricity to charge my electric vehicle. Now, when I am using electricity to charge my electric vehicle, then that electricity may come from different sources. If it is coming from the source, which is a thermal power generation, which burns coal for the power generation. Now you see, as the end product, I am not polluting, but the energy, the power which I am using to charge my electric vehicle is also leading to some pollution. So that is a very important thing. So the BEV, I'm telling the BEV, it is different than the gasoline engine. It is different than the IC engine. It's only in the aspect that it doesn't have a fuel tank or it doesn't have a tailpipe. That is the emission of the burning gases. Okay. So the tailpipe emission of the battery electric vehicle is 0. But it doesn't mean that the other emission which it causes is 0. That I will come to later. Okay. Now come to the other part of the, so the very simple one-line concept is any battery operated electric vehicle or BEV or any plug-in electric vehicle, it uses the electrical power to charge it. The tailpipe emission is 0. I am not getting any emission from this. Whereas the tailpipe emission from gasoline-based engine or IC engines are more. Then there is another type of vehicle which is known as plug-in hybrid vehicle. So the earlier one is plug-in vehicle, it is a plug-in hybrid vehicle. Why it is used basically? Because you know that the electric vehicle runs with the battery and the battery as it runs gets discharged. And the range of the battery, the range of the vehicle is dependent on the size of the battery which we are using. So to extend this range, because range anxiety of the electric vehicle is one of the important aspects. That's why a lot of research is going on the development of efficient batteries. Yes. Which can produce the extended range. So to extend the range of the electric vehicle, we may power this electric vehicle partly by gasoline and partly by electricity. So that there is the hybrid. The hybrid is, it has two parts. One part is gasoline, the other part is electricity. So they have battery, they charge the external outlet. It has also the regenerative braking capacity. So this is one of the important aspects, this regenerative braking capacity. What happens? This also used in your metro and other things. So when the vehicle applies the brake, that means its speed decreases, then I will get some stored power fed to the battery itself. Okay, so that is the most important thing. So basically, this plug-in hybrid vehicle use a gas engine which is run by the gasoline or petrol or diesel to extend the range. And there is a battery also. Then the other one is the hybrid electric vehicle. These are the three basic classification of the electric vehicle: BEV, PHEV, and hybrid electric vehicle. The hybrid electric vehicle is having powered by both gasoline and electricity, but they differ from the PHEV by only relying on the regenerative braking for battery charge. Okay, so the battery is only charged by regenerative braking. It is not charged by separately outlets. So these are the three important aspects of the electric vehicle which you see on the road: BEV, PHEV, and HEV. Coming to the next slide, this is a hybrid vehicle. You can see this diagram of the hybrid vehicle. As I'm telling you, hybrid vehicle, you see it has mechanical and it has the electrical parts. Okay, so now I have the motor. These motors are electric motor which drive the wheels. And what type of electric motor are there? Either they are AC electric motor or DC electric motor. So they get the power from this converter. So the converter is basically converts this battery pack. That means the output of this battery pack is DC. So this converts it into a higher power level, either DC or AC, to drive this motor. And there is another part which is in series with that. So this vehicle is a series hybrid electric vehicle. So you can see the electrical part and the mechanical part, they are in series. So you can see the advantage of the series EV. So this is a hybrid series EV, because hybrid vehicle, I have told you, it has two parts: either the fuel tank, the fuel tank may be petrol, maybe diesel, maybe gasoline. It uses the engine, and it has a generator. So this generator generates your power. This power is used to charge the battery, as well as this power also may be used to run the motor. So in this case, no mechanical connection between the engine and drive wheel. You can see engine and drive wheel, there is no mechanical connection, which generally happens in the IC engine. Okay, and the advantage here, the torque speed profile of electric motor, it can eliminate the necessity of multi-gear transmission. You don't have, because in IC engine, you know that there are multi-gear transmission. You have gear 1, 2, 3, 4, and rear, all these things. So it can be happen by the motor and motor controller. It is a very simple control strategy. But generally the efficiency is poor. The traction motor to be rated for full power, and this generator here, it adds more weight to the machine. So this is a series hybrid vehicle. So you can't tell in this series case, the pollution or the emission is reduced to zero, because you are using a fuel tank. Now there is a parallel hybrid vehicle. If you look into this parallel hybrid vehicle, now you can see this mechanical part. Earlier, the mechanical part and the electrical part are connected in series, but here the mechanical part, that is the fuel tank and IC engine, okay, and the electrical part, the basic idea of the electrical part is nothing. I'm repeating it. You have an energy storage system, which is the battery. The battery is having a power electronic converter, which converts this voltage to a very high voltage or the other aspects there to drive the motor, and this motor is coupled to this mechanical coupling to the wheel. Now both are coupled mechanically. So this is you don't have a electric generator, whereas the electric generator is in the case of series hybrid. But in the case of parallel, you don't have the electric generator. It is system efficiency is better. So these are the some idea about the. See, I'm not going into the detail of the control aspect and detail of other aspect, because I'm just giving you some of the basic concepts of this electric vehicle and its impact, and how to reduce the emission and other things. So these are the three different types of electric vehicle which we are generally using across the globe. Now I'm discussing about the electric vehicle and its environmental benefits. So what are the environmental benefits we are getting? So basically the three advantages, as already mentioned to you, one advantage is the electrical cars. They are having very high efficiency than the IC engine, because the loss in those electrical machines are very, very less. You can design very high efficient torque also. The starting torque can be very high in comparison to the IC engine. So a lot of advantage I am getting by using an electric car pertaining to the efficiency. And also I am reducing the dependency on the fuel cell. I'm not using, the fossil fuels. I'm not using any fossil fuels like petrol or diesel or gasoline, which is derived from this fossil fuel. And the maintenance is also very low in the case of the your electric car or electric vehicle. So most of the EV, particularly BEV, already I told you it runs on electric power. But the question is how this electric power is produced. If my electrical power is produced from the thermal power plant, then I am not achieving my goal of reducing the pollution level or giving the benefit to the environment, because the emission I am reducing at the end user, that is in the vehicle there is no emission, but the power which I am using as it is coming from the fossil fuel plant, okay, the thermal power plant, then in that case I am also making a lot of pollution. So if the EV can run 100% on the renewable sources or sustainable sources like the solar power, or I can run it with the wind power, then in that case I can tell the emission is reduced. So that is very important question. Can we drive all the need of our electrical power for the EV which are running on the road by the sustainable and by the renewable sources? So the factor which we consider during the evaluation of the environmental impact of this electric vehicle are: one is the tailpipe emission. I have already mentioned about this tailpipe emission, and looking into this tailpipe emission in the first figure, from the tailpipe emission I am telling this vehicle is bad, and the tailpipe emission here this vehicle is good. But I'm not going, if I'll go into a deeper from the tailpipe emission to well to wheel emission, this is another important point. It is well to wheel, that means the whatever gasoline or petrol or diesel you are producing from the petrol plant or the diesel plant or the reformer, from that to the wheel. So what is the emission you are causing to the environment? So that's why emission at the end point, that is tailpipe emission, and the emission in between, in transporting, in producing those fuels from the well and reaching at the wheel, is well to wheel emission. So that's why the energy source that charge the battery also I have to consider. What is the energy source I am using to charge the battery, and ultimately the car efficiency. So if I'll compare the factor which are responsible for the impact of EV on the environment, whether it is electric vehicle or it is the IC engine based vehicle, then in that case I have to must consider the tailpipe emission, the well to wheel emission, the energy source which is used to charge the battery, the energy source which is used to produce the battery, as well as the efficiency of the car. So these factors I will discuss in detail a bit. Now let us talk about the emission. So if I'm talking about the emission, this is I have taken from this source is there, and I'll give you the slide so you can download this particular one from the source and you can find a lot. So if I'm looking at BEV, battery electric vehicle, I'm telling it has no tailpipe emission or it has no direct emission. Tailpipe emission is the direct, which is coming out of the exhaust of the IC engine. But when evaluated in the factor of the tailpipe emission, EVs are more eco-friendly in comparison to the gasoline powered vehicle. So ultimately, as the battery operated electric vehicle, as the tailpipe emission is 0, so I can tell it helps in improving the air quality in my town, in my city. But with no tailpipe emission, this electric car, they produce no carbon dioxide emission also while you are driving. So ultimately it reduces the air pollution. Okay, so that is the most important thing for this electric vehicle, as it has the tailpipe emission is 0. But I cannot evaluate the benefit and give 100% credit to electric vehicle as the tailpipe emission is 0. But if I'll consider the evaluation of eco-friendliness of the electric vehicle, although I am getting the tailpipe emission is 0, but while I will consider the well to wheel emission, then This is very, very important. So the pollution which is caused by IC vehicle, the internal combustion engine vehicle, the gasoline based vehicle, it is not limited to the exhaust from the tailpipe, because only looking into the tailpipe emission, I am telling the IC engine based vehicle are bad and the electric vehicle is better. But when I am coming the power, and when I am coming the oil which I am using for the IC engine, I will add those emission also. Now the process of extracting the oil in the refinery, the refining it to the fuel, transporting it to the gas station or transporting it to the petrol or diesel stations, it also generates a lot of air pollution, because I'm starting from well, that is extraction of the oil, the type of machinery I am using, the type in the refinery, the type of power I am using, and in the transportation, while I am transporting all this oil to different parts. So all, if I'll consider everything, so they also exit some pollution into the environment. So that's why this will take care of the well to wheel emission. So these emission are basically well to wheel emission, or it is called indirect emission or upstream emission. At the downstream, that is tailpipe. So even though the modern IC engine manufacturer, they have lowered their carbon dioxide emission in the manufacturing process, but still they impact a negative. So the well to wheel emission is there in the IC engine, as well as the well to wheel emission is also there in the electric vehicle, because it depends on the power which I am using to charge my vehicle. So the upstream emission which is taken into account for the electric vehicle is the production of the EV battery, the production of the power electronic components, okay, the production of all these motors. So if I'll consider all those things, in fact, the production process for EV can be more taxing on the environment than that of IC. Still, the EV remain as the cleanest option for the transportation, because their entire life cycle is much more sustainable overall when I am using at the tailpipe end. So that's why due to the use of electricity as a fuel to charge the electric vehicle or to charge the battery, the driving makes up their higher manufacturing emission. On an average, the EV produces half a conventional vehicle's carbon emission. So whatever the carbon emission is occurred by a conventional vehicle, half of the emission is by the your electric vehicle, as reported in some of the literature. So, but these are the indirect emission or upstream emission. So that's why this is I've taken from one of the sources. That source I will show you in the next slide. So this greenhouse gas or the air pollutant that are emitted to produce and distribute the energy is used to power the car. So when I am charging the car, I am using some energy. When I'm using this particular energy there, then I'm also getting some power, and I have to see which electricity I am using for that. Suppose that's why I have written here, and in this particular paper, it is there. It is written that it depends on the geographic area and the energy source which is most commonly used to produce the electricity. For example, if I am using the power to charge my electric vehicle, which is produced by solar, then the indirect emission is zero, because I am using completely the solar power to charge my vehicle. But suppose a vehicle is used to charge the power which is coming from a thermal power plant. So there is some indirect emission. But the same thing differs if the power is coming from a nuclear power plant. So that's why you have to be very careful and cautious, and while telling the emission which is done by the electric vehicle is zero. Yes, it is zero with respect to the tailpipe emission. But when I'm considering the well to wheel emission, it is not zero. It depends on which power I am using to power my electric vehicle. So this is a study which is done by the reference is written at the end here, and this is a study by the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology. They compare the overall environmental impact of electric car versus the IC engine, either petrol or diesel. Okay, so the main aim of this particular study, so that the users can understand why, how, and what are the cases this electromobility is actually outperforming according to its green image, because we have given a green image to this electric vehicle. So this green image is basically, it is cutting down the per kilometer emission as compared to the fossil fuel counterpart. So you please consider this particular paper, go through it, and you will get a lot of idea. But a very important point which is to be considered, which I'm again and again telling, that the emission created during the production of an electric car tend to be the higher than a conventional car, because the manufacture of the lithium ion battery, which is very, very important. And this is an essential part of the car. So that's why this the reference tells more than a third of the lifetime of carbon dioxide emission from an electric car come from the energy used to make the car itself. So as we are changing the technology, it is coming better and better. Okay, so the main emphasis which I want to drive out in those all these slides are, because to look into the environmental impact, not only looking into the end, but also looking into all the aspects which are taken care of all these things. Now coming to the next, please refer to this particular paper. This is a transportation research part D of the Elsevier, and this is very good study which I found. This is a health and environmental benefit related to electric vehicle introduction in EU country. They have covered all the European country. Okay, in all those European country, how this health and environmental benefit is obtained. Okay, so if you look into this particular table, which I am taken from this particular reference, and the paper is given here, you can see, depending on the power plant, whatever the power plant we are using now, either it is a nuclear power plant, or it is a gas turbine power plant, or it is a coal fired power plant, lignite based coal, then different type of coal we are burning, or natural gas, or hydropower, wind, biomass, photovoltaic cell. So these are the different power generation from where we are getting the power to power the electric vehicle. Why this is important? Because this is important. I have told you what is the power we are using to power the electric vehicle, which contributes to the indirect emission of different material. Now, if you look into the emission of NH3, NOx, SOx, so these are the two important parameters of the emission in production of the power, NOx and SOx. X stands for 1, 2, 3, etc., whatever. Okay, and besides that, the carbon dioxide emission and the PM matters. Okay, PM 2.5 to 10 and PM 2.5. So you can see in different power plant what are the emissions coming from. Then accordingly, you can claim whether the electric vehicle, whatever you are using, is beneficial or not. So this is also based on a data which is given on this paper, and you can find the Excel data from this particular website. Okay, so the main thrust is showing this particular slide to you is that there are emissions from the power plants. So either the power plants are renewable or non-renewable. So the mostly you can see I can get the power from photovoltaic, and I can get the power from wind and biomass. Again, you can tell, although the photovoltaic power is having zero emission, but the point is the photovoltaic material which we are using, the solar cells which are using in producing those solar cells, a lot of emission is also taken into account. So that is the very, very important aspects. That's why you can see here all these things are not zero. We have to see all these indirect emission. So this is another air pollutant emission for the transport by conventional engine, and a distinction is made between well to tank, whatever, or well to wheel, whatever I have already told, and tank to wheel or tailpipe emission. So basically these are the two terms basically used, tailpipe emission, or they call it tank to wheel. And indirect emission is well to wheel or well to tank, WTT. Okay, so WTT and TTW, these are the two important things. And the pollutant you can see NOx, SOx, PM, and other type material. This is a detailed study by that paper in European country. So you can have a comparison of all these emissions in different gasoline, diesel engine, and the electric vehicle engine. And you can see what are the benefit of this electric vehicle in comparison to the IC engine and others, if you are only considering about the emission. Okay, now coming to a brief summary about whatever I have proposed here pertaining to the emission and other things. The EV, they can produce the zero tailpipe emission if it is a battery operated electric vehicle. But if it is a hybrid, you have an gasoline engine or IC engine, whether series hybrid or parallel hybrid, then the tailpipe emission is there. Even when we are using the fossil fuel, the EV contribute few emission than IC vehicle because there are indirect emission also there. The most important thing, if you want to reduce the indirect emission, particularly we want the EV battery production should be clean, because the lithium and battery production also causes the indirect emission. IC vehicle, they pollute continuously because whenever you are running the IC vehicle, every time they create the pollution, but EV may not. And nowadays the EV manufacturers are also using various eco-friendly material for the production of the EV, as well as the IC engine manufacturers are also. So the point is, at this particular junction, either we cannot neglect all these IC vehicles suddenly, or we can go directly into the electric vehicle, but everything is having its own advantage and disadvantage. But ultimately, we are how we can make our environment clean by using this. Okay, now coming to the power generation, because I have told in this case of the electric vehicle, the most important thing is the power generation and which power I am using in my, or which power I am using in my home, because ultimately this vehicle can be charged in my home. Every vehicle is associated with a type 1 AC charger. I'll come to the charger later on. So this type 1 AC charger, which I can charge my home vehicle in my home from 230 volt AC in Indian context, I'm telling. Okay, so you can put it in a 3-pin 15 ampere plug and you can charge your vehicle. So now coming to the power, the present energy scenario, we want that our power must be green power. I want the grid must be green. So to make my grid means power grid green. So I have to add, there is no alternate way. I have to add more and more renewable generation. So if I am adding more and more renewable generation, like solar generation, like wind generation, the hydropower generation, and the biomass generation. So these generation make my grid green, or power green by reducing the emissions. So now all these generation, because when I'm talking of a grid, please try to understand, many generation can be connected to a common grid. From that common grid, then you can take the power to different entities. So all these generation which I'm getting, if they are tied to the grid, they are synchronized to the grid, I call it the grid tied generation, or I call it off-grid generation. I'm giving you a classical example. Suppose there is a very rural area. There is no power is reaching in that particular area, but you want to produce the power in that particular area by solar or biomass or something. So you have a local power production where the grid is absent. That is basically known as the off-grid. Okay, so there is an off-grid solution, which that means you create your own grid by producing in your own power by means of either solar or wind or a small hydro or a biomass plant. So that will be used locally for your own uses as well as to charge this electric vehicle or whatever. Then the most important thing which I want to tell to you, there is a problem which is associated with this solar power and wind power. Also, to tell, in the case of the solar and wind power, the emission is zero. But remember, the solar and wind power production is uncertain. You can commit, you can tell how much thermal power you can produce tomorrow, because you have enough reservoir of the coal, you burn the coal, you will get the power. If a thermal power plant commits If tomorrow I will give 5 megawatt of the power, it can. But if solar power plant or wind power plant promises you, I will give you 2 megawatt of power tomorrow at 11 a.m., they may or may not give, because the power production is purely dependent on the solar insolation as well as the wind speed, which is not in my hand. So that is the greatest challenge of this renewable generation, in particular solar and wind. I'm not going to the hydro and biomass, because in hydro, you know what is the head of the hydro, what is the head of the water. So the amount of power you can produce. In biomass also, you know what is the amount of the biomass you have, because that is in your control. The fuel is in your control. But the fuel which is used for solar, that is solar insolation, the radiation, the wind speed is not in my hand. So the solar and wind generation is always associated with a variability and uncertainty. So if there is a variability in the power, if there is an uncertainty in the power, either the grid you tie it to the grid or you have a off-grid solution, then how to avoid this uncertainty? Because I am fully dependent on the solar and wind, and unfortunately there is no power. It is off-grid. It is off-grid having solar and wind. But suddenly there is no solar insolation in a particular day. There is no wind speed, or wind speed is very low in a particular day. You may not get that amount of the power. So what you will do? From where you will get the power? Because the grid is absent. So to avoid this particular challenge, what you can have some storage. Storage means battery storage. So that storage is very important. So the storage will mitigate, or the storage will compensate the deficiency of the power production, the uncertainty in the power production from the solar and wind. Okay, so this is the main important. With the increase in the penetration of this renewable power nowadays, every country is taking the initiative to increase the solar power production, to increase the wind power production. So with the increase in this we call renewable energy. So with the increase in this penetration of renewable energy, and with the increase in the number of electric vehicles, so the grid operator, because these electric vehicles have to be charged on the grid. So there are large number of electric vehicles. We are talking of now, we are very happy. Oh yes, electric vehicle causes less pollution. So everybody is pushing to go for the electric vehicle. But when I'm pushing the use of the electric vehicle, I'm trying to replacing the IC engine with the electric vehicle, then simultaneously I have to look into also my condition of the grid, because I am increasing the load on the grid. And while talking this, I'm talking of the existing grid. Okay, so to compensate this extra power which is needed, okay, if I don't dependent on the fossil based power plants like thermal power plant, then the ultimate thing is I have to increase the solar, wind and renewable generation. So when this happens, the grid operator face a lot of challenge. So while considering, you see, everything is dependent on each other. I am putting some challenges to you. If there are some of you are electrical engineer, you can understand, if I am putting more and more renewable sources and where the power production is uncertain, then my grid operation faces a lot of challenge, because planning and operation of a grid under uncertainty is one of the important aspects. The second aspect is the reliability of the grid and the stability of the grid. So this is a report of November 16, 2020 in the business line. If you are battling for the climate change, then you can have the solar power plant, you can have the wind power plant, and the artificial intelligence nowadays can lead the way for energy solution. So ultimately, we are using a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning techniques, particularly the three different areas: the grid infrastructure and stability, the energy storage, and the transmission and distribution. Okay, so ultimately, we want the grid to improve. The grid is having a safety and reliability. So this is another very interesting paper, optimizing the India's electricity grid for renewable using AI and machine learning application. So ultimately, see, I'm putting you more and more problem. Initially, I was very happy. Yes, I am using the electric vehicle. I am causing less pollution. But as I'm going into the deeper, what is the power I am using to power this electric vehicle, and what are the challenges on the grid, and how this battery will affect the performance of this vehicle. So coming to the next important thing, so this artificial intelligence based approaches can create a smart city, it can create a smart public facility, smart transportation system, a smart grid, smart water delivery system, and smart healthcare. Because ultimately, I want the a smarter environment for that particular purpose. So now coming to this electric vehicle, a detailed idea about this electric vehicle I want to give in the next half an hour or 45 minutes. What is the main part of this electric vehicle? Because we are talking of this electric vehicle so much. See, as already mentioned to you, this electric vehicle is to be charged. You have to charge, and you have to charge the battery of the electric vehicle. So you need an infrastructure. So the infrastructure, which is the crucial link between the vehicle, and in the vehicle there is a battery. Why you want to charge the battery? Because the battery has already discharged or depleted. So you have to charge this the battery which is in the electric vehicle from a source. Okay, and that source is known as EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. So this is very, very important, is the EVSE. So all these charger where we are talking of, whether it is a AC charger or DC charger, it is a home charger or the public charger. So all these chargers, okay, are the part of the electric vehicle supply equipment. So now, why there are so many differences in the charger? Because the charger has to charge the battery. So when the charger charges the battery must have the recharge capacity. So this EVSE charging capacity is an important consideration. And while using this charger, I have to look into how fast I can charge the battery. What is the way and how fast you can charge the battery? So based on, there are different chargers. So there are level 2 charger and level 1 charger. The level 2 charger, if you look into, or the level 2 EVSE, if you look into, they are basically available with 20 ampere, 30 ampere and 40 ampere capacity. Ampere is the current ampere. That means how much current you are taking from the grid or taking from the source to charge your battery. You know that, for example, everybody of you is having an inverter in your home. So what exactly we are doing? Whenever there is a power supply, you are utilizing this power to charge your battery, which is a lead acid battery, of course, in the home. So once it is charged, so I am utilizing this when there is a off, there is no power. So that's why this is the most important thing. What is the amount of the current you are injecting to the battery to charge this particular one? So that's accordingly the charger is capable. So here you can see some very common things which are used across the globe. One is the level 1 charging. So this is the home charger. So this level 1 charger, this is a wall mounted charger. You can see this is a level 1 wall mounted charger. This is available everywhere. It can be available in any of the Kirana store in India. The people are planning to go and charge the vehicle there. But basically the current, already I have told you, 12 to 16 ampere. So if I have a 15 ampere plug in my home, which I am using for the heater, which I am using for the geyser, which I am using for my air conditioner, so I can use the same plug, same socket to charge my electric vehicle level 1 charger, because the maximum current which I'm getting is 12 to 16 ampere. So I have a 15 ampere plug in my home. Okay, so the other level 2 charging is, so this is the socket. You can see these are the 3 pins in the socket. Okay, pin number 1, pin number 2 and pin number 3, which we are having in our home. And similarly, this is a level 2 charging. The difference between level 1 and level 2 is this level 2 charging is a network charger or not network charger, but the power output is more. Okay, in the case of this is 16 ampere, it can go up to 30 ampere. So it is having, you can see this is the pole mounted. This is a public type of charger in an apartment or in a parking lot or in a charging lot where you can take your vehicle and you can charge. But remember, these are the AC charger. You are using AC to charge your vehicle. So when I'm using AC to charge my vehicle, so this AC is converted into DC because battery will be ultimately charged in a DC power. So this AC will be converted to DC inside the vehicle, which is known as onboard charger, OBC. Okay, so I have an onboard charger. This onboard charger converts this AC into DC to charge the vehicle. So these are the J1772 in this plot, okay, which is widely accepted. Now there are other charger, which is DC charger. So in this case of DC charger, what you exactly want to do, just to make this you aware, I do not need the onboard charger. There is an onboard charger, but I don't need it. So I can bypass the onboard charger. Directly, I am using the DC to charge the battery. So this is a DC fast charger. You don't have to convert the AC into DC, which is the onboard, then charge the battery. So, but here you can have a very high power charging directly giving the DC, and the fast charger can range 20 to 50 kilowatt. And even now, if you are going to charge a battery of the electric bus or electric truck, it is of 80 kilowatt, 90 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt. And the voltage level is basically more than 480 volt. If it is 480 volt DC or 600 volt DC, and the current you can see is 100 ampere. So simply 480 DC voltage, 100 ampere DC current, if you will multiply this, V into I is approximately 50 to 60 kilowatt power. So these are the DC charger. So that's why we call it fast charger, because we are injecting a heavy current to charge the battery, and the power output is large. You are directly charging the battery. So the battery, depending on the battery capacity, it will be charged with a less time, maybe 30 minutes to 1 hour. You can charge an electric vehicle. And the GON, which is used to charge your electric vehicle, this is the GON. This is the DC GON. So there are different standards. One standard is CHAdeMO, which is a Japanese standard. Another standard is combined charging system, CCS. These are used in European country as well as in USA. Tesla is used in USA. And another is GB/T, okay, which is used in China. This is another socket, another standard, okay, GB/T. It is also adopted in India, which we called Bharat 001 standard. So please remember, depending upon your charger GON, a particular vehicle can be charged, because the vehicle output, the vehicle socket will be fit into this particular charger. You cannot charge any vehicle in any of the charger. That is the most important thing I'm going to tell you. So these are most important thing is this connector of this electric vehicle. And there are different connectors. I already told you, either it is a GB/T connector, it is a CHAdeMO connector, it is a CCS connector, or it is a Tesla connector. So if these connectors are different, then you have to look into a particular charger which is having that particular connector, so that you can connect your vehicle to charge it. So the connector is very important. So this is the attachment between EVAC cable that provides the physical connection between EVAC and the plug-in electric vehicle. So you have the charger, that is EVAC, you have a vehicle of your own, then you have a connector which is to be connected here. Okay, so this connector is different connector. One is, please try to understand, one is SAE J1772 connector. That connector I have shown to you, J1772 connector. So this connector is developed by US Auto Standard Development Organization, SAE. Okay, so this connector is a simple AC connector. Another connector I have shown you, okay, another one is the CHAdeMO connector. So if you look into this CHAdeMO connector is developed by Japanese Auto Standard Development Organization. Similarly, the Tesla, they developed the supercharger connector, okay, which is used for Tesla cars. And the one connector is the CCS, combined charging system, which is used in most of the European country and USA. So these are the different connectors which are utilized. So I'm showing you one simple connector which is used in India. You can see this is a very simple 3-pin which we are using for our air conditioning or some other system. This is IEC 60309 industrial socket. So this is used by all Indian e-rickshaw, the Mahindra e-car, which is come initially, Mahindra E20 and Mahindra E20 plus 6. So this is very easy. This is a AC connector. AC, once I'm telling it is a AC connector, this is not a fast charger. You put it in your home, okay, home charger, it will charge. Then there is a development that is IC62196 type 2 connector. It is used by Indian and global EV electric car. So this is the connector you can see. These are the 3 pins. Okay. And some other pins for some other purpose. These are mostly used Mahindra E20 plus 8. They now change this, Nissan Leaf, Renault, etc. So this is very important. Although I have an electric vehicle, so don't have the impression you can put it anywhere and charge it. So you have to look into this very, very carefully. So these are the DC plug connector. So I have already shown you the AC plug connector, and now this is the DC plug connector. So when it is DC, you know that there is a positive and negative. 2 pins are there. It's fine. There is a 1 pin is here, 1 pin is here. Okay. So there are 4 DC fast charging connector currently used across the world. As already told you, CHAdeMO. CHAdeMO is basically used in Nissan and other Japanese company like Mitsubishi. Then SAE, combo charging operator. This is a combo AC as well as DC. That is known as CCS, which is used in BMW, GM, VW, and other car makers. Then there is a supercharger or Tesla connector. I have shown you earlier. Then the GB/T connector, it is Chinese company use this. And in India, Mahindra and Tata cars also use this type of connector. That is CHAdeMO connector. So this is very interesting thing to know that all the electric vehicle are having different type of connector to be used to charge this. So your charger are also different. So some chargers nowadays, some charger manufacturer are having the dual gun. Okay, on one side it has 1 gun, which is as per the CHAdeMO. But the most important thing in the fast connector, this, you may ask me, why this? There is a positive and negative. So why all these things are there? That is very, very important, which I am coming to just after one slide. Then if I'm talking of the DC fast charging, particularly it depends on, see, the rating of the charger is in terms of the kilowatt, whether it is a 10 kilowatt charger, 15 kilowatt charger, 30 kilowatt charger, 50 kilowatt charger. That means this much power the charger can give. And if you run this charger for 1 hour, then the energy it will give 10 kilowatt hour, 15 kilowatt hour, 30 kilowatt hour, 50 kilowatt hour. And your battery is also what is the kilowatt hour and what is the voltage level. So most of the battery which we are using in the small cars are either 48 volt battery or 72 volt battery. These are used for Indian electric car like Mahindra E20 Plus, Mahindra E-Verito, and for some upcoming Tata electric car. Even if there are some cars like Nissan Leaf and others who use 750 volt or even higher voltage, not this very low voltage. So at this high volt, you have to charge. So voltage is high, with less current you are giving more power. Low voltage, high current you have to do for having the same power. So that is just giving the concept of the DC power which are using to charge the battery. So the level 1 DC charger, if I am using a level 1 DC charger, maximum power is 10 kilowatt to 15 kilowatt and the voltage is 48 volt to 72 volt. So definitely you can see 48 volt, and if you are going up to 200 ampere, so approximately 50 into 200 is 10 kilowatts. Okay, and 72 or 75 into 200 is 15 kilowatt. So if you are using 48 volt and maximum current of charging is 200 ampere, then the power which we are giving is 10 kilowatt. And if you are using 72 volt and the 200 ampere current, then the power is 15 kilowatt. This is level 1 DC charger. In level 2, you have to off the voltage, like in Nissan 750 volt. So I can off the voltage into 1000 volt. So if I am off this voltage 1000 volt, the power output will be increased, and the power and output can vary from 30 kilowatt. That means it can take 30 ampere of the current to 150 kilowatt, which can take up to 150 ampere of the current. So these are the level 2 DC charger. Level 1 DC charger, low power, low voltage. Level 2 DC charger, high power and high voltage is there. Okay, so this is the basic idea of the DC fast charging. But the most important thing which I want to tell you, What are all those things? Why these standards are different? Because there is always a signaling, there is always a communication between your charger, that is EV-AC, and your vehicle. What is this communication? This communication is between the battery and the charger. So who will communicate on behalf of the battery? The BMS, battery management system, which is very, very important, because this is not a battery which I'm using for the storage purpose. This is a battery which I'm using in the vehicle. So while charging, the battery will demand, I can take this much amount of the current for my charging up to this period. So the battery charging is having a mode which we call the CC and CV, continuous current, then voltage. Okay, CC mode and CV mode. So I'll tell all those things after this. So always there is an interactive process. Always there is a dynamic process which requires continuous communication between EV-AC and EV. So a lot of communication exchange occurs. A lot of handshaking occurs during a charging process of a battery. And mainly that's why there are communication ports which are there in the charger. I'll show what are those communication ports and why this is important. Because you know that in the case of a battery, the battery charges. Like you have a battery in your mobile, and this is also a lithium-ion battery. Okay, a coin cell which I'm using in my mobile. And you can see in your mobile, it gives you the status of the charging while you are charging it, the percentage of the charging. And similarly, you can see the process of the discharging. When you are using it, you have seen 90%, 80%, 50%. So what is the state of charge of the battery? SOC. It is just exactly the amount of the fuel you have in your fuel tank. Okay, so if you do not know what is the SOC of the battery, you can't guess how much kilometer you can go by this. So that's why the SOC is very, very important during charging as well as discharging. So there is a communication between the battery and the charger depending on the SOC, how to charge. Okay, so that's why this is very, very important. So now you can see, I've told you why these points are there, why this is in the case of the DC charger. I'm showing you. DC is always having plus or minus. So this plus minus is 48 volt, 72 volt, 600 volt, 1000 volt, don't bother. But what are those other pins? So these pins are for communication purpose. The communication which is used in GB/T standard adopted in China, okay, is CAN bus communication. And the communication which is happening between the charger and the battery or the BMS in CCS, okay, or in the other CHAdeMO is PLC, power line communication. So depending on the nature or type of communication, I have different communication channel. So you can see this S stands for the signal, S plus and S minus. These are the two pin, S plus and S minus, which are the status of the CAN bus, which is used for the communication. Similarly, the CC1 and CC2, these are the connector check. This will check whether the charger and the battery are connected properly or not. So the connection status will be given. So connection check 1, EV testing of the charging cable connection. Connection check 2, EV AC testing of the charging cable connection. So it will, the cable will, because you have two socket, like you put your charger gone into the vehicle, in that case whether the connection is proper or not, okay, the insulation resistance is proper or not, can be checked by the CC1 and the CC2. So it's not that much simple if it is a DC charger only having two pin. Now there is a auxiliary circuit A plus and A minus. You can see this auxiliary circuit. This will check the EVSC voltage supply, okay, for electric vehicle control communication, and auxiliary circuit minus. So these are the another circuit. So these are very important aspect. Those who are doing a lot of research on this particular area to develop different charging protocol for the electric vehicle, so they do a lot of work on this particular one. Okay, now this is another charging protocol which I have shown to you. The same thing, this is plus or minus, but besides that, the CAN bus communication, CAN low, CAN high are port number 8 and 9. These two are the CAN bus. Then 4 and 7, if you look into these two, 4 and 7, These are for particularly cable connection check. The 2 is the charging sequence signal. 10 is the charging sequence signal 10. So likely these are the different points you can see. So only I want to give, as this talk is very generalized, to give some insight into the electric vehicle and the electric vehicle charging system. I'm giving you, it is not the charging is very simple. You put the plug and charging will happen. No, there are different other aspects we are looking into while charging. So this is the SI charging configuration and the rating. Already I have mentioned to you, the plug-in electric vehicle is having a onboard charger. So the voltage range is in European country and other country 122 volts, and the power is 1.4 kilowatt or 1.9 kilowatt. So you can charge it by at least with AC charge 7 hours. Okay, SOC 0% to full. And the battery electric vehicle, it is PHEV, because PHEV capacity is less. So you can charge in 7 hours. The battery electric vehicle you can take 17 hours. DC level 1, then you can charge it with a very minimum time, 22 minutes or 1, because it uses, already I have told you, 200 to 450 volt DC, and the current is 36 to 80 ampere. So definitely this is used for 20 kilowatt off-board charge. Not on-board charger are maximum 7 kilowatt, not more than that. Because if you will have a 20 kilowatt on-board charger, it will, the size of the vehicle or the size of the charger will be huge. So that's why this is the very interesting phenomena, the AC level 1 and DC level 1. So now I'm coming to the battery. If I'm coming to a battery, you know that there are different types of different chemistry of the battery. Every battery is having its voltage range 3.7 volts and some dimension. I'm not going into the detail, but the standard charging and discharging of the currents are there. Now, I'll give you a simple highlight of the charging infrastructure, particularly which are in India and in any of the country. Because already I have mentioned you, there are 2 types of charging. One is the slow charging, another is the fast charging. The slow charging is the AC charging. You can do it in your home. The fast charging you can do at public places, or the fast charging you can have apartment wise or street wise, at least 1 or 2 fast charge where you can charge it very quickly. Okay. So now they already mentioned the slow charging, it takes place at home, at residence. So when you are making this charging at home, at residence, so at least you know, or I know when I put my vehicle in charging. So that means that the power demand is predictable. I know what is the type of the vehicle I'm using. I know when I have to charge it, and my charging pattern is basically fixed. Because if I'm an office going person, I know I'm going to the office in the morning 9 o'clock. Okay, I come back at 6 p.m. and mostly I will put in my vehicle to charge in 7 p.m. in the night. And as it is a slow charging, it will take 8 hours. So by morning 5 a.m., the vehicle is fully charged. Fine. So the problem is not there. Very simple. There is a deterministic way of charging. So the power utility know what is your charging pattern, and the power demand is predicted. But in the case of fast charging, mostly you do it by when you are traveling. So suppose you are traveling a long distance and on the way you want to charge, or the cabs, mostly the cab which run around the city. So they may be discharged in between. So they have to charge very quickly because they can't take 7 hours to charge their vehicle. And so all the passengers will gone away. Their income will be zero. So they need fast charging. So when they need fast charging, you don't have a particular pattern of charging because the route of those vehicles. So I'm coming now towards a little bit transportation. The route is not decided. It is sudden. If I'm going suddenly somewhere else as a individual customer, then I know in between I have to charge, and that is once in a while. Similarly, if it is a taxi type of thing, you don't know what is your route. It depends on the type of passenger you are getting from the airport or from any particular place. And on the way, you may have to charge. Today, you may have to charge on way number 1. Tomorrow, you have to charge on way number 2. So that my point is, this fast charging, the power demand is unpredictable. So ultimately, how I can develop a charging infrastructure looking into the traffic, looking into the traffic structure. Okay, so that is the most important thing. how we can provide the charging infrastructure, because that is the most important point. People are not going or not encouraged to take into the electric vehicle. Particularly, I am talking of the Indian context, because a big question in the mind, where to charge it. So you have to develop a lot of charging infrastructure. Okay, because the context in European country and the context in India is a bit different, because in Indian scenario, the number of vehicles are very large. Okay, and the charging station is also another task, because if it is a metro city like Delhi, Mumbai, or Chennai, you know that to put all the chargers you need a lot of land and other things. And see, in a petrol pump, your vehicle can come and it can full the tank in 5 minutes, but you can't do it for an electric vehicle. The minimum charging time is half an hour. So that's why we have to look into where to put this charger, looking into the traffic network, and looking into the electrical substation also, because you need power there. So that's why the effect of fast charging, another is important study, you have to have the effect of fast charging on the grid. So when you are putting more and more fast charging on the grid, then what is happening? If it is a low distribution system, it is a medium voltage distribution system, they are designed on a daily load pattern, because we know who are the consumers to a grid and their operating pattern are already well tested. But suddenly there is an increase or decrease in the load because of the change in the charging pattern, then this may affect the performance of the grid, with whatever I have already mentioned to you. So to avoid that, we have to make a different issue. So these are some electrical studies you can do. How can you avoid the overloading of the grid? How can you do a smart charging infrastructure so that your charging can be distributed in time? Because ultimately we are taking the electrical energy, and nowadays the electrical energy, the concept is coming the availability based tariff, or TOD, time of day based tariff. When there is a heavy demand, the tariff will be high. So at that time, the grid is telling me, don't use power so much at this particular time because I am stressed and my power rate is very high. So why should I charge my vehicle during that particular time? I should look for a off peak period when there is no peak. So that is most important aspect of the charging, the demand side management. If there are any electrical engineer among all of you, this is a very important concept now across the globe, how you can manage your electrical load efficiently to reduce the stress on the grid and to utilize the availability, renewable power, whatever, incompletely, in total. Okay, so that is the most important thing. I'm not going into the detail. So this is another important thing. Can we electrify the public transportation system? In a public transport system, if we encourage the people to use the public transport, and the public transport is having the e-buses, the e-vehicles, even if the small travel, the e-rickshaw, then we are taking a pilot project in Delhi NCR to study this. And so this is the main idea. This is the New Delhi's orange bus route, and these are the depot. So now if all these buses which are running on these routes are to be charged, so how to put charger on the depot to have minimum impact on the grid, and every time you can charge all those buses with a minimum cost efficiency, and you can plan in which depot how many chargers will be there. Because what happens generally, all these buses are running from 5 a.m. in the morning, and they will come back at around 11 p.m. in the night. So they will get from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. to charge. But there are hundreds of buses in a, for example, in a depot. So if you charge 100 buses at the same time, and every bus is 100 kilowatt, so you can see how much power I need. 100 kilowatt into 100. So that much of power suddenly you require at that particular time is a challenge. So my point is how we can create a smarter charging infrastructure. Indirectly, we can do a less impact on the, or less stress on the grid. That is the most important. So this is another e-rickshaw route we are studying on South Delhi. I'm not going into the detail of that. So the main idea is to carry some research or work, the optimal placement of the charging infrastructure, looking into the vehicular network, the traffic network, and the distribution network. because many research going on only the study of the distribution network. Many research going on the study of this traffic network, but they are dependent on each other. Looking into the number of traffic, looking into the number of electric vehicle penetration in a particular area, you have to plan your electrical network accordingly. Okay, so these are the some idea. Now, the whatever I am telling to you till now, we must go for more and more reliable power generation, and the solar power is a renewable power, but it may not be reliable because of the uncertainty, whatever I am telling. So sometimes there are problems also. If the solar generation is more than my load, what I'll do? I have a solar generation on my rooftop. Okay, and even if I have a two-wheeler, I can charge this two-wheeler and whatever the load in my home, but I'm making more and more power generation. So what I'll do? Can I fit to the grid? So that's why this is very, very important aspect. If the solar generation is more than my load, what is the activity? Because there will be a mismatch between this power, whatever I'm generating, and whatever load I am having. So what I have to do in this particular case? So the whole power, solar power, whatever we are producing, we can differentiate into different category. Your residential building, the hotel, the industrial building, the office building, school and shopping mall. Why I am categorizing this? Because you can see the power consumption of all are different. If you plot the 24-hour power consumption pattern of the residential building will be different. The industrial building will be different. The official building will be different. Because what happens in the official building, the daytime power consumption is more, starting from let us 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And during that time, the residential power consumption is almost zero because everybody is going to office or work or some school, whatever. Industrial building, the pattern is different. So that's why point is mall, shopping mall, etc. The pattern is different. They produce, they require more power in the evening time because after you come back from office, you will go to the mall or shopping or something like that. So my point is you have to look into the pattern. And fortunately or unfortunately, I am getting the solar power production in the daytime. So it may happen that during daytime, I'm getting more power from the solar, but my load doesn't demand it. What I will do? So that's why these are the very interesting challenges. And already I have told you, you can use this power for the charging of the vehicle, but where and how? So this is a simple power or the load management concept I am giving to you. Now you can see this blue one, this is let us the power power demand for a 24 hour. So that's why it is known as a load curve. If I'm plotting the load curve 12 midnight to next day, okay, so this is the load curve. And you can see that how this load curve is changing. Okay, so now this is the sunrise and this is the sunset. Okay, and you can see during this time, the power which I am requiring is less than the power which I am getting from the photovoltaic generation. So maximum power I am getting, but the power which I require is less. So what I will do this rest of the power? So can I do some load management? Okay, so whatever equipment I have, can I do load management? So what I can do now, this power, so this is my self consumption in my home. I'm just giving this is my home power, one particular home. Okay, and in my home there is a rooftop solar. I'm getting maximum power at this time, but nobody is in my home to take this power. And I can't charge my electric vehicle because I'm coming to office with that electric vehicle. So that's why the very important thing, can you do your electrical load management? Okay, so now this is my self consumption in the daytime. This is the extra power. So can I feed this extra power to the grid? So that is the most important thing which we can do. So there are two important scenarios. I'm not going into the discuss in the detail. People tell yes, solar is good, but sometimes the solar is having a bad effect also because this results into a duck curve. So duck curve is based on a 2012 study. This term is known as framed by the California Independent System Operator. Why it happens? Let me tell you only one sentence. Okay, now you can see from this time to this time, the solar power production is very large. So if the solar power production is very large, then what will do? This is your electrical power demand. This blue one is the electrical power demand. So if this is the demand, and this demand is more in the daytime, okay, let us 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. right? And during this you are getting maximum. Now I am not looking into an individual power, I am looking into a grid perspective. Okay, the total power available to the grid and total power to be fed by the grid. So in this case, what happens? Please try to understand. Once I am getting the solar power, I will be very excited. A large amount of the solar power. Okay, so this much solar power I am utilizing. Rest of the power, because this solar power cannot meet all my load. So rest of the power I am taking now from my thermal power plant. Now look into a scenario from here. 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. in 4 hours. In 4 hours, your solar power decreases to 0, but your load demand increases. So you have to ramp up your thermal generation. So if you ramp up your thermal generation, so that is a restriction in the thermal generation. It requires to ramp up from 15 megawatt to 20 megawatt in 3 hours. Can you do it? So that's why this results in a duck curve. Okay. Initially, I was very excited. I'm very happy. I'm using my solar power, but sometimes it gives a problem to my grid. I cannot ramp up. So that is the most important thing. So similarly, there is the duck curve solution. What is the duck curve solution? Because the problem of the duck curve is the ramp. You need a ramp, almost 13,000 megawatt in 3 hours. So here comes the solar, here comes the storage, which can help you. So that is the most important thing, the storage. So ultimately, the solar, the storage, the grid, and your EV charging as a whole is a package. So this is very, very important. So another important thing, this is also known as the NESI curve. This is actually Hawaii system operator. So this is very steep than the duck curve. This NESI curve is the another steep. This is the impact behind the meter of the rooftop PV. So these are the two important. One is the California market, another is the Hawaii market. How they saw this solar power production is good, but its impact on the grid. Okay, so this is basically the duck curve and the NESI curve. They apply well to electricity market with high air conditioning load and growing share of the solar PV in California and Hawaii. Right. So now coming to some other challenges. I'm just skipping it because of the time specificity. So I'm showing you the solar main idea of the solar. Forget about the fuzzy controller or whatever maybe. So every solar panel is having this a PV curve. Okay, this is the voltage and this is the power. And ultimate aim is to extract the maximum power of the solar. So what is the factor which will produce this maximum power? You can see this increases from this point to this point with the increase in the solar insolation. The solar insolation is expressed in terms of kilowatt per meter square. Okay, so if the irradiance is large, then the kilowatt per meter square is large. So from the same panel, you can get maximum power. And this maximum power is also dependent on the temperature. So ultimately, I can tell you in one sentence, what is the maximum power a solar PV cell, or when you are connecting the cell in series and parallel. So when you connect the cells in series, you are going for a higher voltage. If you are connecting it in parallel, you are going for large amount of the current. Okay, so you can combine the solar cell in series parallel combination to increase the voltage level and current level so that you can produce maximum power, because the production of V into I, the product of VI is the power. So ultimately, I have to operate at this particular point, which is known as maximum power point of the solar cell or solar station. So that maximum power point I have to extract by means of a controller, which is known as maximum power point tracking controller, MPPT. Okay, so this MPPT is very, very important, where you can track the maximum power point. Right? So so you have to design some controllers for the maximum power point tracking. I'm not going into the detail how to design this controller. So ultimately, you have to design this controller for maximum power point. But there are some challenges. The challenges are, I have already told you, you can see here, the PV module are connected in series. So for example, these 5 modules you connected in series. So if each module is, let us 72 volt, then all these module you connect the 72 into 5, you can go up to 360 volt. And if you connected them in parallel, you can increase the current. So the voltage of the PV array is increased by connecting them in series. The current which we are drawing from the PV array is increased by connecting them in parallel. So that you are getting now see a larger amount of the voltage and the power also. Clear? PV. So this is the PV curve. Now what happens? Because of the cloud, because of the large trees or tall buildings, at any particular time t, okay, depending on the position of the sun, depending on the position of the cloud, depending on the position of the building or tree, some panels may be shadowed. So if these panels are shadowed, you will not get a uniform PV curve. You will get a PV curve of this nature. So here comes the challenge, because you want to extract the maximum power. You can see the maximum power is here. Now the same panel under certain other condition, the maximum power point is here. So this maximum power point is shifting depending on the shadowy nature. So that's why my controller, which I am designing to extract the maximum power from a particular PV array, I have to tune this controller in such a manner that it can able to extract the maximum power in a dynamic condition. And this dynamic changing condition is arising because of changing in the cloud or changing in the shadowing condition. Okay, so this is the main challenge. This is the partial shading. You know, in different type of geographical area, either you can have partial shading because of the tall tree, you can have partial shading because of the snow, because of the dust, and because of the nature of the birds, etc. So all these things, cloud, tree, tall building, pole, zone, dust particle. So that is the point. So you have to clean it, and all these things have to be there. But something is in your hand. This and something is not in your hand. For example, cloud, snow, this is not in your hand. You can clean it. This you can clean. Okay, but not regularly. Suddenly there is a dust storm. Okay, your power production is decreasing to 20%, 30% like that. So that is the main challenge, how to operate this at the maximum power point. So this is another important aspect. I'm not going into the detail of this because these are some theoretical and technical aspect which we are doing in our laboratory, and I'm skipping all those. And next is I can tell you something about, let me see, what are the next slides? About the battery. So I'll take another 5 to 10 minutes to discuss about the battery, because initially in the initial slide I have told you in the electric vehicle battery is the important part. In this battery we are causing a lot of indirect pollution or emission by producing this battery. And if you look into all the vehicles are used the lithium ion battery. So every battery is having the electrode. One is the positive electrode anode and the negative electrode cathode. So in this we use different type of material. So if there are any material chemistry people among you, you know it better than me. We use the positive electrode as lithium cobalt oxide, lithium nickel oxide, lithium manganese oxide, lithium iron phosphate, lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide, and lithium nickel cobalt aluminum oxide. These are the different chemicals which are used as the positive electrode. And for the negative electrode, either it is a carbon based or lithium titanate or alloy based electrode or silicon based electrode. Because depending on this electrode and depending on the chemistry, the battery characteristics will be different. So there are different type of battery. You can see there is a cell type of battery. This is a cell, cylindrical cell. You may have a prismatic cell or you may have a pouch cell of different dimensions. Okay. So what is the capacity of a battery? When you are talking of the capacity is basically what is the amount of energy that it can deliver in a single discharge. If the battery is discharged completely, so how much energy it is delivering? That is the capacity of the battery. And generally the capacity of the battery is expressed in ampere hour. And in my mobile, the battery is in milliampere hour. You know that is 5,000 milliampere hour, 6,000 milliampere hour, 4,000 milliampere hour. That means it can deliver that much of milliampere continuously for 1 hour to fully discharge. So the more will be the ampere hour of the battery, the better is the amount of energy it has. Now that battery I am charging. So when now the amount of energy the battery can hold is constant. that is kilowatt hour or watt hour or ampere hour also, right? But when you charge it, you can charge it at different C rates. C rate is charging rate. So this charging rate of a battery is the charge or the discharge current in ampere as a proportion to the rated capacity in ampere hour. I am giving an example. Suppose if you have a 500 milliampere hour battery, so the C rate, if you are taking C by 2 rate, that means you are charging this battery either at 250 milliampere. If you will charge it at 2C rate, then you are putting 1 ampere. So that is the C rate. Okay. So at which C rate you are charging this battery? So that's why I have shown you the different charger are having different current capacity. Your battery may have the particular ampere hour capacity, but you are putting more current to charge it or less current to charge it. Then there is a constant current charging. So this is a charging process where the level of the current which you are feeding to charge the battery is constant, irrespective of the voltage. So if you put on more and more this current into that, the voltage will improve. But you are injecting a constant current to charge the battery. So now once the battery will attain a sufficient voltage level, then you don't need a constant current. It is a constant voltage charge. So this is a charging where the voltage applied to the battery is held constant. So initially it is the CC charging, then it is the CV charging. It completes one cycle of the charging. So similarly, every battery manufacturer gives you a cycle life. So this is the how many cycles the battery can run. So if you have a nickel metal hydride battery, it can cycle life of 500 cycle. Nickel cadmium battery, it can have 1000 cycle. So these are the different cycle life of the battery. So depending on performance, different chemistry. Okay. So most commonly used chemistry is NMC, nickel manganese cobalt oxide, or LFP, lithium iron phosphate, or lithium manganese oxide. So all the battery, this is the standard literature you can find in any of the chemical material or anywhere how you have to decide the battery based on your specific energy, that is capacity, specific power, the safety, the performance, the lifespan, and the cost. So some may be better in terms of the specific energy, some may be better in safety. So likely you can choose the chemistry of the battery and performance comparison for your cycle. So these are the some vehicles which are used in India and their battery capacity. I'm not going into the detail. But basically in IIT Delhi, we are doing a lot of work on the battery pack design, the battery testing, the software for the EV and its components, different battery cell testing, battery module testing, pack testing, the battery management development, and other things we are doing. And these are the some facilities which are available in our lab. Of course, this is not of maybe of interest to all of you. Anyhow, so I'm giving just a brief concept of this and the battery testing what to do. So this is the final slide, the EV subsystem. If I will show you in this EV, not only the power is required to charge the battery, but also there are different things. Just I will conclude here. You can see this is the electric motor which I am using to drive or for the transmission purpose rather than IC engine. Then this electric motor is getting the power from the inverter, and this inverter is getting in the power either from when you are putting this charger. If you are putting a AC charger, then the onboard charger will feed the power. If you are putting a DC charger, then the DC-DC converter is coming into the picture. Then this battery is having a battery management system. So this battery management system does all this work. It monitors the cell, it monitors the battery module, it monitors the battery pack, it monitors the thermal aging of the battery. So the safety of the battery is very, very important. And all this communication of the BMS is done by the CAN bus. Okay. Besides that, we are using also the air conditioning, the compressor motor, the heater. So you need some auxiliary power for that purpose. For air, so this is electronic control unit. There are various ECU, electronic control unit in the EV. There is an electronic control unit for the air conditioner, which also requires power at a different voltage level. Your voltage level for this electric motor may be high voltage, but here for the ECU, you need 24 volt. So you have a compressor motor, you have a heater, okay, and you have informant system. So all these systems require some amount of the energy, so which is very, very important. And the battery management system is also very, very important. So this is the overview of the electric vehicle, the charger which we are using in the electric vehicle, and all other system which are using particularly I'm not going into the details. So this is just, I have told you how the battery is charged. Initially, we charge it up to 3 hour or 4 hour. If it is slow charging by constant current, once it attains a voltage, we charge it with a constant voltage. So once the voltage is constant, then you reduce the amount of the current. Okay. So similarly, this is the discharge. So gradually it discharges, but suddenly, so you can't go below this nominal voltage. Okay. So this is the constant current discharging, because I am taking constant current from the battery. Okay. So here I may end my presentation, and I open to all of you for any discussion or anything you want to tell. Please.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for your nice presentation, and it is very interesting to have this EV.
Yeah.
But my question is that when, for example, on charging EV, for example, if I have 40% of this battery, and if I want to go about 50%, the road that needs 50% of charge.
Yeah.
Is that I need to charge this 40% to 50 or to full charge, or how I can manage this?
Yeah.
For example, if the network of charging is not there on that way.
Yeah. So this is very important thing, because when you know your battery capacity, because every vehicle gives its battery capacity, and with that battery capacity, how much kilometer it will run. Okay. And mostly they advise you can charge up to 80%, 20 to 80% the SOC. So if you have 40% SOC and you want to go, let us 10 kilometer, for example, I am using, let us say, particular vehicle where the total range, the battery will be completely discharged from, let us 80% to 20% if it travels 100 kilometers. So 80% discharge with 100 kilometers. So maybe it is not a linear scale, but still I have an idea. If I have 10% SOC, I can go maximum 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers. But if I have another vehicle where a full charge and the battery size is more, a full charge gives 450 kilometer range, then in that case, with 10% SOC, I can go more kilometers. So that's why please look into your SOC and the battery which is used, and the car manufacturer gives you what is the range of that particular vehicle. So always the battery manufacturer or the vehicle manufacturer, they tell you charge this battery particularly with a slow charger. If you will every time do it with the fast charger, then there is a problem, because the battery is having a chemistry. This chemistry, it degrades, the anode and cathode degrades if every time you are going to a fast charging process. Yes, please. I hope I have cleared your doubt, whatever you have.
Abera,
Not audible.
not audible to us.
Yeah. Yes, Abera. Yeah, please. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you at all. If you can type your question in the chat, then I can.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, now it is okay. Now it is okay. Please, please.
I mean, I understand your answer, and on the life of battery, there may be effect if we repeatedly charging with some percent.
Yes.
I understand the answer that you gave me, but my second question is that, for example, if we have solar power,
Yes.
if there is some shadow on the solar power, what is the impact of that shadow on the transmission of electrons of each panels? For example, if there is some shadow on one panel, and if there is the other gets sunlight, what is the impact of that shadow on the electric transmission or electron transmission?
Yeah, that I have shown you. If there are shadow, you cannot extract the maximum power from that. So the maximum power in that case decreases. So that's why it is very important. You have to operate at the maximum power because you cannot reduce that shadow. The only thing is you can take care of this shadow, and even if in that shadowing condition, because I have shown you 3 diagrams, depending on the position of the shadow, your maximum power point changes. So ultimately, I have to design a controller so that I can operate at the maximum power point. I can extract that maximum power point. So that is the most important thing.
Okay. Why I'm asking this question is that I heard that there is a damage due to this shadow on some panels. I heard this one. I don't know the case when this is happening.
That may happen because I'm not working in that particular area of the effect of the shadow on the panel. But basically, as an electrical engineer, I look into if there are shadow, whatever the maximum power I am getting when there is a fully uniform solar insolation over the panel, and when there are shadows on the panel, the power outputs are different. My controller should work efficiently to extract whatever the maximum power is produced at any particular condition. Okay, so you may refer to some of the literature, or I may refer to some of the literature and come back to you. If there is any degradation in the solar material itself because of the shadow or something. Okay.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you. Okay, anything else?
Sir, we will maybe mail to you if we have any questions. Since no one is asking. Sir, thank you very much for the very informative and insightful talk. We believe that all the participants will be taking this learning into their respective field, and we truly appreciate your valuable time here with us today, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar to all of you, and please, thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear participants, we will be having a tea break. We will resume after 24 minutes. Thank you.